Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being your show, we're talking about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Deputy. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, obviously, this guy, Trent, is murdered, and the fact of the matter is, it turns out that a friend of Joseph's named Matthew, interestingly enough, it's the actor who played Walter from Lost. I'm sure I know that can kind of be a touchy subject for certain actors and stuff like that, obviously being recognized from one of the things like that, but that's the thing I know him best from, but regardless. And I think this show, in particular this episode, handled this subject very nicely in the sense that, like, despite being an officer, it doesn't matter. Joseph being black comes first. You know, it's like he's telling his friend not to run. He's like, hey, he's telling the cop that's trying to tell him, like, get on the floor or you don't want to get shot, essentially. And he's like, Joseph's like, dude, I'm a sheriff's deputy. Like, the fact of the matter, I can show you my back. It's like, but the dude don't want to listen. So now, not only is his friend running, which that could be much worse than what it is, but also Joseph is being treated like he's some criminal by nature. It's like, I wasn't even doing anything and you're already pointing a gun at me, not even willing to listen to me. And so obviously, you know, Joseph talks to Matthew, and for him, it's like, you know, obviously he believes Matthew, and he's like, dude, but the fact is, that's not going to be enough to get you out of here. But he's like, they build this place up to break you. Don't let it, you know? So, and obviously, you know, and I thought it was a nice emotional scene when Joseph got pissed, because it's like, the fact of the matter is, once again, him being black, it's like it's like in that moment it didn't matter, because for Joseph it's like he knows that situation could have ended so way differently, and it's like, I'm a damn cop, and it seems like that didn't fix anything. You know, it doesn't change anything, because when you're a cop to other, you know, people's you know, it doesn't matter, because it's like, oh, outside of the uniform all they see is a black man. It doesn't matter, you know, anything. And it's just like, and obviously, you know, Charlie, she understands why he feels the way he does. But the fact of the matter is, rather than taking the time punching at your locker and stuff, we need to kind of, you know, find a way to kind of help out your friend Matthew and kind of figure this situation out. So he goes to Bill. And Bill obviously is kind of like, I don't know if I can really get involved, like, but obviously, like, for Joseph, and Bill says, like, the only big reason he took this up is because Joseph never asked him for anything. The fact is that he wholeheartedly believes that Matthew is innocent. He's willing to, you know, look into this investigation and stuff like that. Which obviously you have Bishop being like, yeah, this could be a slippery slope, kind of sticking your neck in some other department's investigations and stuff like that. But like I said, but for Bill, it's like, you know, all got to basically kind of, you know, do our due diligence to basically see, you know, whether, you know, what the whole situation really is. Because Joseph is trusting his gut, something Bill's always told him to. So it's like, well, how can I ignore him when he's telling me to do this? And obviously, like, you know, if we look into it and find more, then we'll kind of, you know, continue on. But at the same time, they stop by what, you know, it looks like the barber shop that Bill met up with the mayor a little while back. I think that's the same place. But Joseph goes there because Charlie's like, yeah, you can get any information, it's going to be here. And obviously the moment he walks in there, everyone kind of gives him the stink eye. And in particular, one particular dude is calling him out by being like, saying like, oh, like, you're kind of making it seem like he's less than because he's a cop, because kind of considering him a traitor and stuff like that. And the guy's calling him out because it's like, because, you know, for Joseph, he's like, I'm just trying to get an innocent man out. And then the dude's kind of like, really? Oh, you must not know. You must got it twisted, because you must not know how things work. Like, saying, basically, you know, there's plenty of innocent people in jail. Like, that's just how this whole system is built. And he's kind of getting all up in Joseph's grill. And Joseph touches on him, which Charlie's like, yo, boot, calm down. But I did like that line. I thought it was a powerful line from Joseph. And he's like, the fact of the matter is, this badge means I'm protecting you, and even you. And you're the one that's, if you think this makes me any less black, then you must be the one that's got things twisted, or you must be the one that's confused. I like that line. And I think that line's so powerful because of that thing. And I, you know, and even Charlie, you know, says it in the episode. In the black community, you're not black. You're not a black cop. All they see is blue. and obviously the history the black community has had with officers, like I said, because it's not a perfect system, and we can all recognize that. And the fact of the matter, and I like that, bringing in stuff from the obviously real world into this fictional setting, but still being true to it, is like, that being a struggle for Joseph. It's like, well, how do I handle that? Like, I'm being looked at one way because, like, obviously all other officers look at me as just a black man, and that's a problem. But my own community looks at me like I'm a traitor, like, oh, because I'm wearing a badge, like, so how am I supposed, because Charlie's like telling him he needs to kind of know when to be one, and the other is like, well, how am I supposed to know? And it's kind of like, there's like, it's almost kind of like there's a balance, and yet there's not a balance to it. And it's a very complicated situation. And I don't think there is an easy, like, oh, this is just the solution to it type of situation, But Bill goes and visits the detective leading the Trent investigation, and then he goes and visits Matthew because the detective was like, yeah, there's so much evidence saying that he did it. They've even got a recording and stuff like that. But then Bill goes to see Matthew and is like, oh, you lied to Joseph, because the fact of the matter is you've had meetings with Trent and stuff like that. Basically, because of his criminal history, getting a job isn't the easiest thing. So it's that sad situation of you're sadly like limited in options, because obviously jobs don't really give options for a criminal history. And so it turns into a thing of like, okay, so how can you kind of get further when the system that's in place kind of screws you over in the sense of making it impossible for you to get a job or fix your future when you've already been to jail and stuff like that, yet it kind of follows you. But the fact of the matter is, it kind of puts you in a position where you if you want to get money to kind of sustain your own life or someone else's life, the fact of the matter is you have to kind of go back to, that criminal life, like there's no winning. It's like almost a lose-lose situation all around in that regard. And once again, I don't know the perfect way to kind of fix the system. Once again, it's not a perfect system. It is a very, very flawed system, But the thing is, the DA or whatever was offering Teresa, who interestingly, had they brought up the fact that she's a criminal lawyer, or at least just a lawyer in general? Had they brought that up before? Obviously this is our first time really seeing her, at work, but I was like, I never knew. Maybe they had referenced that before and I forgot or missed it. But nevertheless, she brings up the fact that they're offering a deal, which Bill's like, if this case is so open and shut, why would they even be offering a deal on the table if their case is so secure? Well, obviously in the courtroom, Bill steps forward, and he's like, can I approach the bench? And she was like, no, you may not. And then he looks at the bailiff, and he's like, well, he's not going to stop me because, he works for me. And he kind of comes to the front. And I love that he's like, yeah, like, we want to lock up the bad guys, sure. But at the same time, our part of our job is to do our due diligence, essentially, and look into this investigation where it's like trying to make sure that, because despite everything, it's like everyone's entitled to kind of like the same quality of things, in the sense of like the same quality of representation, but also the same. That's actually infactual, the whole quality of representation. But the whole conversation about. Like I said, just investigating it, and obviously the judge ends up giving him 24 hours, and he ends up taking it to kind of look into it. But you can tell, they start looking into people from the old gang that Matthew is a part of, that him and Trent were a part of, and it leads down to at least one particular guy, Alec. But it turns out Trent was very big into getting money, but the fact of the matter is he ended up betraying a lot of people, as it came up later on, early, because I'm all over the place, so I do apologize. But the dude in the barbershop was kind of like, oh yeah, like Trent had a tendency to burn bridges. He was willing to just kind of stomp and use people for any means, if it meant kind of making his life better, getting him money. But Bill and Kate look into it, and it turns out, like, obviously he was ratting on people, his particular gang, because they started getting, like, people he was associated with started getting locked up, so he was throwing them under the bus, and whoever killed him was worried that he was going to do the same to him. So it's like, but the person to have access to all this information and stuff like that would have to be someone with a badge, so obviously it's a cop involved. And so obviously we have, Matthew getting released from prison, and his boy Alec ends up releasing. But I'm also like, yeah, that's a little, well, because it's interesting too, because it's like, oh yeah, Alec's so cool and everything, but it's like, well, you must know that he knows you sent the cops his direction anyway. It's like, oh, you're the ones that gave. Well, cops had already visited Alec anyway, so I guess maybe you wouldn't think too much of it. But it's just kind of like, Matthew did give him Alec's name, but then they start figuring out, like, okay, like, they bailed him out because they're trying to, take care of this. Even going to put, like, a gun on his hand and everything to make it seem like, oh, like, he was trying to rob my store, so I had to take care of him. But it's just that, because, it was the same thing with Trent wondering, like, oh, why am I doing this? What's going on? Literally tried to kill him, but luckily Joseph and Charlie showed up in time. And for him, it's kind of, the guy was like, Alec was telling Joseph, like, oh, there you are trying to pretend to be one of them, when Joseph was like, I am one of them. And it's kind of like, put the gun down. This doesn't have to end that type of way. And obviously Alec does put his gun down, and Charlie ends up taking him down, but he even ends up saying this line of like, oh, they'll betray you, because I guess for him it's that thing of like, well, obviously it's like the black community is always going to turn against you because you're a cop. The cops are going to turn against you because because you're all more so for them. The thing that comes first is you being black. So that being the thing. And so, but luckily, that happened. And obviously Bill ends up kind of pushing the situation, and during they end up finding out that the lead homicide detective on this case is actually the one behind all of this. I even like that moment he has with Bill later on, because Bill asks him, it's like, why did you do this? He's like, I kind of don't know why. And it's like, he's like, no, I'll wait here until you give me an answer. And for him, it's that thing of like, you cross a certain line and you keep thinking in your head like, hey, I can always come back. But once you cross that line, like that line gets blurred and you kind of lose track of where it is. But once you cross it, it's very hard to kind of come back, And it gets to that point that you're so lost along the way that you kind of can't even see that line anymore. And so you just kind of get stuck on that side of things, not being even able to recognize yourself. And he almost tries to say, like, for Bill not to judge him and stuff like that, because even Bill's like, yeah, I've done some stuff, but the fact of the matter is, because it's the whole conversation about like no one starts down this path, which Bill is like, yeah, that's true, no one does, but that's where my job comes into play, where I end up taking down people like that who you might not have started out that way, but that's the path you're on now, and that's what this badge and this job position, means to kind of, And I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing. And it almost seems like, in particular for Bill, to end up having that conversation, I think it was really fascinating, because it's like, well, could you make the argument Bill kind of skirts a lot of lines, but the thing is, like, eventually is Bill going to cross a line he can't come back from? The fact of the matter is, and it, in his mind, it's probably like, it's going to all be for the service of justice, potentially, I mean, sometimes that line gets a little blurred and could end up becoming just the road for revenge, but maybe this is kind of foreshadowing something similar happening to Bill in the future, that maybe he'll cross a line that maybe he won't recognize, or maybe Bill believes firmly enough that he might skirt that line, but he will never cross it. But, the road to hell is paved with good intentions and all that, so we'll kind of have to wait and see on that front. But I do love that moment between Joseph and Matthew too, because it's like, why didn't you tell me the truth? Because he was like, I was trying to protect you and everything. But for Joseph, it's like, the fact, because it's like, you don't know what it's like kind of out there, and Joseph's like, well, that's why you got me, to kind of have your back through all that, so like, kind of rely on me, let me be there to kind of help you in that regard. So luckily he was able to kind of keep his his good friend alive and everything, especially for Matthew, who like I said, because of his past, couldn't really get his past was obviously used against him, as being like, oh, obviously it stacks against him to be like, oh, look at all this criminal stuff he's done in the past. It might have been years ago and stuff like that, but it sets a pattern in people's minds of like to twist it around and make it seem like people can't change. People are capable of change if you give them opportunity and chance. Obviously a whole thing in itself, but I thought that was kind of a neat element. Kind of tying all this together too is the whole Charlie and Jerry situation, them meeting in the elevator, which is like, because even Charlie's being like, yeah, Bill crossed a lot of lines to kind of get this all kind of done. So the fact is, he kind of ignores the rules and kind of does his own thing, which obviously we kind of learn more about why Jerry has it out for Bill so much. Obviously, it's because I think for him, it's like, he feels like I respect this job and position. Bill doesn't, to the point he's literally like, I want those stars. Like, it seems like more so than anything, that's what this is about. Because for him, he makes it seem like he's about protecting the order, the law and order, the system of things, that Bill's threatening that. But it's like, for him, it seems like the job is what it makes it seem like that's all he's after, which even, Charlie's like, hey, you give me what I want, my vote's your way. Because he ends up saying, like, we're both kind of the same, because obviously she lost Luna. Obviously he's going through a divorce. This job and life has kind of cost us what we love. But the fact of the matter is, but it kind of, it increases, it kind of pushes them to kind of protect what they love. And obviously, so it's definitely going to be interesting. Obviously, like, Charlie continuing to kind of look, it's like, I mean, at the end of the day, it kind of all works out. But at the same time, it's still that thing of like, yeah, you're skirting the line now, but eventually you're going to cross that line that obviously Charlie's going to end up nailing you for. In particular, Jerry is. I don't know. I think because for Charlie, it means kind of getting where she wants. But at the same time, I'm like, are you willing to screw over your Boots godfather in that regard? I don't know. Maybe she's even playing Jerry. Maybe this is kind of a long game for Charlie. Maybe she's willing to play both sides if it means getting what she wants. I'm curious to see where things kind of stand at the. Maybe it's a crossroads situation. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just going to be clear cut of, nah, like she's willing to kind of spy on by Bill and everything for Jerry, and as simple as that. But I kind of feel like there might be more complexity to that. But, we'll kind of have to wait and see kind of the more, nuances to this situation. Some other avenues in this episode in particular I thought were kind of interesting were some of the other side things. Obviously, the whole thing with Cade and Teresa, the whole thing about adopting the kids. Because obviously, it's like, for him, it's like, we're trying to have this baby, and then on top of that, I'm kind of putting you in this position where we have to adopt these two kids. But the whole thing is, like, will they ever see me as dad or potential father in their lives? Or will I always be the guy who killed their dad? And so it's the whole thing of trying to figure out, what's kind of best for both them and the kids. Obviously, they want the kids, but at the same time, it's like, but are we going to be the right fit for them and everything? So that's a complexity. But at the end, we do see, like, Teresa she did like a pregnancy test. And the look on her face, it almost, I don't know, maybe because she said she didn't read it, so it looks like Cade was going to be the first one to read it. So we never got the resolution to that, whether or not it's kind of, but if she is pregnant, what does that mean in the long run? I don't know. Because does that mean they're going to be more, because if they're having a kid of their own, it might turn into a thing of like, oh, does that mean you not want us anymore because of that? I mean, especially what he told the son about getting revenge against him, like what that all means. Like I said, I know that's going to come up in some shape or, but I'm just curious in what manner, Along with all of that is the whole situation with Bishop. It's a smaller part of the episode, but I thought was kind of an interesting element is like, her girlfriend asking her is like, oh, when you going to unpack all your stuff? It's like, no, that stuff is from, what was it, like her job from Washington? She was like, the past. And it's like, her girlfriend's like, yeah, LA's where you come to reinvent yourself. And I'm like, what is Bishop running from? And then, like, her girlfriend, like, pulled out some, like, stuff from a box. Like, there was, and that one, it looked like one of the pictures looked like it was her, looks like it was Bishop with longer hair. And then there was another woman, and it's like, and the note being like, oh, who's this cutie? Whatever it is, Bishop is running from something. I don't know whether it's some mistakes that she had made or what, but even to the point she can't even unpack the boxes, that she would rather throw them away because her past is something she can't quite escape. I thought that was such an interesting thing. I'm very interested to kind of dive into like understanding what that's about. And then finally, there's this other angle with Paula, who's dealing with like, the hospital and everything, because it's kind of like she's being asked into this meeting because basically her boss is asking her to make the choices of cutting the staff down. But for her, it's like, we're literally already like, these people are overworked and underpaid. If we cut any more from this operation. This team needs to stay together because if we cut any more, their people will die. Like, this facility will suffer from it. But it turns into that thing of like, either we cut away and save money that regard, or this whole facility, this department gets shut down. And obviously, Paula being like, well, you better start with me first. And I even love when she tells that to Bill, and he was like, was I in the room when that happened? And I love that whole thing of she was like, because he was like, oh, I understand. She's like, well, you don't have any bosses you have to answer to. And he was kind of like, oh, I forgot what he was saying. Like, oh, yeah, like, no, like, he was basically saying, like, oh, you must be joking or something like that. But he was basically telling her, like, don't put your job at risk, because would this place be better with or without you? And it's like, without you, it would suffer. So you need to be there to kind of, make those choices, because it's kind of interesting, because like her getting as heated as she did in the meeting kind of would be a Bill move. So I thought that would be interesting. And even her being impressed, being like, oh, look at the sage-like advice you're giving me. So she takes it. But the fact of the matter is, the dude is giving her 30 days to kind of figure out to do something. Like, either she cuts out like 25% of like that budget that kind of saved like 25% of the budget by making some cuts here, or at the end of it, he will be taking her up on an offer and taking her job, which is kind of like, that wasn't on the table initially, but because I put it up there, you're kind of being an asshole about it. But because I think it's more so because Paula like snapped at him like that and stuff like that, and he's kind of all smiles and stuff, but she's kind of, he seems a little dickish. So, oh yeah, another angle to this I completely forgot about is the fact is that Bill is he ran into, obviously we got to meet his dad this episode. It seems like his dad has some form of like maybe dementia or Alzheimer's, because it seems like his memory isn't quite there. But we kind of see where Bill kind of gets, a lot of who he is from. Because the fact of the matter is, his dad had kind of like gotten rid of the nurse that was looking after him. It's like, oh, she was stealing from me or something like that. But she was stealing my... it was essentially like his pride or his reputation or something like that. That's what she was, the nurse in particular was taking. But obviously it's the whole thing of like, oh yeah, look at Bill being sheriff and everything now. Because at first he's kind of like, the fact is you got to be careful, because being sheriff puts a target on your back, not just from the bad guys, but other people as well. But then later on, when he was kind of like not realizing he was talking to Bill, he was like, my son, they made my boy sheriff. There was 2 boys in that picture where I'm like, does that mean Bill has a brother? I'm surprised that hasn't come up yet. I mean, we haven't really dived into Bill's personal life too much, so we'll ultimately have to wait and see. But I'm wondering what that's about. Like I said, we'll potentially get answers on that later. But yeah, because obviously Bill kind of steers the pot in this episode, because when he arrested that detective, not only did he arrest him, which obviously it turns into a thing, because literally as he's walking down, every cop in that department is looking at him, and it's like, the guy's a bad guy. That should matter first and foremost, but it's still a thing of, you're arresting one of us, you're putting one of us in jail. Doesn't matter if he's corrupt, it should, but I think it's a little bit of that blue veil situation of like looking after our own, but now it's like one of our own arresting our own, so it turns into a whole complicated thing. Much like Joseph kind of got that issue of like being black and a cop, Bill's got that position now of being a cop arresting another cop, which I think the captain or whoever's in charge of that department shakes Bill's hand for like, thanks for getting rid of some of the bad from this. But obviously this whole, headlines are going to draw very unwanted attention towards yourself, in the regard of a lot of people are going to, have targets on your back, like that whole conversation said, not just the bad guys, but even other cops, because they're like, oh, that's Bill, So, we'll see in the long run where all that ends up coming, what that ends up coming up to, and, what the ramifications of this might be. But Bill, he's kind of like, if I have to, there's a price to pay for this, then so be it. It needed to be done. So, like I said, we'll see. But I'm very interested to see where all this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.